tucked away on a Massachusetts island, is the home of a beloved American children's author, the father of public television's most famous 8-year-old.
Hi, I'm Marc Brown, the creator of Arthur, and I'm welcoming you to where I live here on Martha's Vineyard. This building is where I live and work. It was an old sheep barn. Come on in. So every morning about 7 o'clock, I come out here and start working. And sometimes if I'm working on something I really love, I forget to have lunch. I have been writing Arthur books for 44 years now, and I never imagined myself as an author. I had a young son who liked bedtime stories, and one night I told him a story about an aardvark, and he liked it.
He wasn't the only one. Arthur's Nose was published in 1976, and 22 picture books, and 20 years later, PBS aired the very first episode of Arthur.
Hey!
I have the best job in the world. Kids are my boss.
It may be the best job, but there is a downside to a lifetime of illustrating.
What do I do with all this artwork? I don't know where to store it any longer. Where does this all go? There's a lot of art here, and I'm really interested to talk with Colleen about what its value is and what I can do with it.
Roadshow appraiser Colleen Fesco sits down with Marc for a cold drink and to offer her opinion on the value of his artwork.
So where did you meet Arthur?
I met him in 3rd grade when I was in 3rd grade. I am Arthur.
No, I won't believe that.
And everyone in my family and my life in 3rd grade became characters in these stories and books. I used to get in trouble in 3rd grade, 4th grade for daydreaming and doodling, and now it's my life. So take that, Miss Mansfield.
So let me get this straight. You've written over 130 books, and it will be 80 Arthur books. And in the studio, how many pieces do you think you have?
You know, I have never counted. Well over 1,000 for sure. More than thousands. How do I find a value? I know there'll be gradations of things and what they're worth, but what is a good starting point?
Well, the good pieces, which to you and I may be the most wonderful pieces because they show your process and the early creativity of the pieces, are generally smaller works that would be working examples of later pieces. They would be the drawings, they would be the graphite, they would be...
So I shouldn't throw those away?
Oh my gosh, no, and you should sign them.
Sometimes I do.
No. Those pieces would have a value based on current auction values of probably between $500 and $1,000.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm going to run to my wastebasket right now.
Right now. The middle range is harder to discuss because it's very vast. Some pieces will be important even though they're not finished because there's seminal examples of something in Arthur or in one of the other books that you've done. So that's a very...
Wishy-washy area.
It's a squishy area.
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle, that would be between, I would say, $3,000 and $5,000. And then what we're using as the best is a piece of yours that sold at auction. And that was a very elaborate watercolor of Arthur's Christmas that sold for $7,800 at auction. But there would be pieces that would be better than that.
Yeah.
There would be pieces that would be much better than that. So we're working on a scale of maybe $500 to $10,000, but it's very fluid.
Yeah, I understand. And I think I have an instinct about which pieces are better.
Sure, absolutely.
Do Marc's instincts apply only to his illustrations? Later on, appraiser Alan Katz will evaluate some of Marc's pricey folk art purchases and attempt to resolve one big mystery. Back at Marc Brown's, he shares with us the folk art items that adorn his Martha's Vineyard cottage.
I feel very lucky that I've had this wonderful adventure with Arthur, and it's made my life very comfortable. And it's allowed me to follow some of my passions, which are collecting American folk art and being able to live with some of these beautiful things every day. Over the years, we've focused primarily on portraits of children of the early 19th century, so that's what we really like to surround ourselves with.
Roadshow appraiser Alan Katz, a notable authority in the world of folk art collecting, dropped in to see some of Marc's American folk art portraits.
This happens to be the very first portrait that we ever bought.
Really?
Yeah.
So what year was that?
1980 something.
Okay.
We loved her expression. We loved the patterned floor cloth. And especially we loved the way she was fingering that little satin ribbon on her doll.
Yeah.
It made her feel alive to us. We know it's by Joseph Whiting Stock. And I've since read a little bit about him. And I know that as a young child, he was working on his farm and a wagon fell on him and paralyzed him from the waist down.
Yes.
And I also know that he kept really good records of his portraits, although this we don't think is signed anywhere, so we don't know who she is.
Yeah, I think we can safely attribute it. It has all the tells of a classic stock child sitting in a painted piece of furniture, this floor cloth.
He loved pattern.
Yeah, he loved the colors and the patterns. And this was probably done in the late 1840s. And it's an oil on canvas. And you paid in the 80s, do you remember?
It was a little over $6,000.
So I think in today's market, it'd probably be worth somewhere in the 15 to 18,000 retail. I think you're a collector, so we might talk insurance value to say $20,000, $25,000 for insurance purposes.
Well, that's nice to know.
Yeah.
We love her even more.
Marc Brown has a hunch he bought a rare painting by 19th century husband and wife artists Ruth and Samuel Shute. But was he right?
One of the most recent pieces we have bought it at auction. It's this wonderful portrait of a little girl. And what makes it really special is I thought it was this husband and wife artist team, Ruth and Samuel Shute, who painted in New England around the early 1800s. Now, what made me think that this was a Shute? It was not advertised in the catalog as a Shute. But I did some research online, and the same form of the chair appears in a couple other portraits of children that they are attributed to the Shutes. And the way the shoes are handled, I've looked at enough of the Shutes up very close to see how they handle the eyes, the pencil work. But this was unusual because the full-length portraits of children that I know of are done with like a gouache watercolor, and they're a little more painterly.
She's not your standard formulaic Shute, as you know.
Yeah.
So we're looking at it, and there's things I agree with you on, and there's things I a little bit, not disagree, but push back a little.
All right.
Because the eyes, I couldn't agree with you more. The pencil work that was done, the drawing first and then filling it in with the pastels, is something that the Shutes were known to have done. Where I'm having a little difficulty with nailing it as a Shute are the hands. They had a very delicate approach to hands. And this little gal is kind of, in a way, holding the book a little bit awkward. And they were also known to really have wonderful lace work. And this one, the detail on the lace is missing. So you go to the auction.
Yeah.
And this is estimated at $4,000 to $6,000.
Yes.
And you pay
30.
What were you thinking?
What wasn't I thinking? I don't know. Why wasn't I thinking? I didn't think I would have to go that high, but there was a very insistent collector on the other end of the phone bidding against me. And I went up to my maximum amount that I changed during the bidding process.
We all do. Looking at it with no attribution, I would say in today's market, $25,000 retail. You can prove, we find a signed one with a similar layout, and we can really nail it as a Shute, then you're talking $125,000.
Wow.
So big difference.
That difference.
Yeah. So we need to do more research. Hopefully we need to find one that's signed and we can lead our way to saying, definitely buy a shoe.
After our visit, Roadshow reached out to some prominent figures in the folk art collecting community. A number of them confirmed their support of attributing Marc's portrait to the shoots, while others felt more research would be needed.
It was so helpful for me to talk to Colleen about the art. It was really terrific to have Alan here to take a look at some of these folk art portraits and learn more about them. I'm really excited to do more research about the shoot. I couldn't have had more fun, and I learned things.